Guys, could your story be worth more than gold? Today, we're going to be talking about how your story is actually a treasure trove of potential and how to untap that potential. You look at it online, an ounce of gold, what is that going for? $4,600? One story, if told well, can dramatically impact your bottom line. Guys, it can change your income in not just a small way, but in a significant way, and for generations. We're going to dive into not just how that is something that will build your value as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, but what this can do for you as far as building your intellectual property that will mean everything for your personal growth. I'm really excited to have Bill Blankschaen on today. He is the author of Your Story Advantage, and we're going to dive in a little bit more on understanding what a true treasure trove your story can be and how to tap into it. So welcome to the stage, Bill. So glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and just glad you're here.
Well, Brigham, so glad to be here. I mean, if you're passing out gold coins, I'm going to have to decline because I do believe that our story is more valuable than gold. I mean, it literally is the gold that's inside of us. I was just talking to my friend, Dean Graziosi, the other day. He's used this example a lot of times of that there is gold within each of us. And it is that story. It is all of that. And looking forward to talking about what we mean by story and all that kind of stuff. But thrilled to be with you and excited to be talking about it.
For sure. Thank you so much, Bill, for being here. I know you've got not just one or two New York Times best-selling books, but you've helped people from the last few decades really distill their story and find value in their intellectual property, not just in books, but in courses, in finding their unique voice. Let's first frame up why it matters so much to get your story out into the public and let others know it. We talk about brand story, and then we can really distill in the value of developing an ecosystem that you talk about of intellectual property, because that's where your treasure trove is, guys, if you can develop that ecosystem. So talk about brand story, and let's hear your concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been my privilege really to come alongside people like Lewis Howes and John Maxwell and Dean and Kevin Harrington, many others, names that people have heard of. But to me, in many ways, I got to be honest, some of the most rewarding projects we work on are the ones you haven't heard of yet. Like they're people who realize they have what I call this meaningful message inside of them that they're burning to share with the world, but they just can't figure out how do I say it well? How do I express it? How do I make it sticky in a way that's sticky and repeatable? Or they have had success. They've actually had people respond to them. Maybe they're speaking, they're coaching, consulting, they're entrepreneurs, they're building a business. And they have people say, you should write a book about that. This is so good what you're sharing. This body of wisdom that has built up over the years. But they feel like they just need help breaking through. And that's where we come in at Storybuilders to come alongside and help them get clarity on that message, figure out how to say it well, how to express it, how to turn it into that story ecosystem. So when we talk about the story ecosystem, here's what I mean. Because I believe your story is living, it's dynamic, it's healthy when it's told well, right? And it's always growing and expanding. But it begins with getting clear on your message, that meaningful message. I call it your message maker, right? And that's your brand story. Whether you're an individual, whether you're an organization, you have a brand. You are known by something. When people think of you, they already are putting you in a story they're telling themselves about you, right? So there's already a story out there about you. The question is, did you intentionally design it, or did it just accidentally happen and you don't have any control over it? And so in the book, we talk about how do you create your brand story and how do you build that out? But this begins with the brand story. Then it goes to the book, which is your message multiplier. And I lay out exactly how to create a book. We can talk about all that today too. And then what do you do beyond that? Monetize it. How do you get your message monetizers in place, whether it's courses, workshops, trainings, programs, all sorts of other options available to us these days. Of where do we go with that? And that's really what that story ecosystem is. And so helping people to realize they have this gold, they have this valuable story, this commodity inside of them, and being intentional about building that up and out in a cohesive way. I don't know about you, but I see so many people out there who are just kind of scattered. They're throwing something here, throwing something there. In this setting, they talk about themselves this way. In this setting, they talk about themselves this way, and they just don't have clarity on it. And that to me is where the power of the story begins.
Beautiful. One of the things that I really appreciate about that is when you're developing your intellectual property, getting complete clarity on that message, it allows others to also resonate with you.
Right.
If you're thinking about things like Chick-fil-A or any business that has done a great job with their brand story, when you have that problem, that brand pops in your head. Maybe you're thirsty. You're like, oh, now I feel like I want a Coca-Cola. Whatever that story or that challenge is, their brand is the answer. And a lot of times when I'm thinking about this, there's really 3 building blocks. I took some Jenga blocks because I was playing with this with my kids.
Yeah, awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Influence, impact, and income. All 3 of these are core elements and benefits to getting your story in place. Let's first start with this idea of impact. If you don't have a story, talk about how much impact you're losing. Can you help us poke the bruise, if you will, make it so that people feel how challenging that is for them if they don't have a story that they have developed and been intentional with?
Yeah. Well, I think to understand the impact, you have to understand what a story is, right? And again, when I talk about your story, I don't just mean what's happened to you. I don't just mean the events of your life. It includes that, but it's also, again, this body of wisdom that you've grown, the experience, the expertise that you've accumulated over the years, things that you know and understand and can do that very few other people can. And you don't have to be the world's best at any of it. You just need to be like one step ahead of the people that you're serving to help them move forward. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I mean by that. So your impact, then your ability to help other people, that's how I define impact. We talk at Storybuilders about how we tell stories that make the world a better place. And that's what defines impact to me. Are we making the world better around us? Are we doing something to improve humanity's story in the process? But if you aren't clear on your story, then it makes it harder. It puts the burden on your audience. It puts the burden on your customers to figure you out and figure out how you might be able to help them. And usually that's just not going to happen. And so if you're an entrepreneur, you're building a business or something, and you're frustrated, you're struggling because, man, I'm putting in the work, I'm just not getting traction. A big part of that may be your story is confusing. You're not clear on that story. You're not clear on what you're doing. And therefore, it's harder for everybody else to figure out, how do I work with you? How do I do business with you? How do I give you money? Why would I give you? How do I do any of that? And I think because we often think if I'm just busy, if I just do the work, good things will happen. There's an element of truth to that, but getting this clear on the story eliminates the friction involved with the whole thing and opens up doors for people to say, I know who you are. I know what you do. And then when I meet somebody who needs what you need, I know your story and I'll share that story with them and make a connection, right? So that's a lot of how that works.
Beautiful. One of the things that pops up into my head with impact is it's not just the ability to help others. It's the ability to help others that want to be helped. I remember a few months back, I came out of the gym and there was this homeless man that I was talking with. He was just really down on his luck. I was like, well, what are your plans today? Tell me about what you're up to. I was just making some connection with him. He said, oh, very busy, very busy. I just got a lot of things to do. I was like, well, what are you busy with? And he said, oh, I'm very busy. I have to go here and to this place to make sure I get enough to survive today.
Sure.
It made me think, well, what are you doing to get out of this situation? I talked to him a little bit more and he's like, no, I just need to figure out what I'm doing today. When we get so struck with the things that we are doing today that we can't step back and look, what is this going to do for us in the future? Sure. We get almost stuck on this wheel, like a hamster wheel of focusing on our current frustrations. And what that story taught me was if we are only focusing on the day, we lose the ability to make really good choices if we don't have that eternal perspective. So if
Yeah.
you want to create impact, a lot of times a mentor or a coach or even a great book can take you and expand your vision. So you can say, oh, if I make this choice today, if I establish this standard, I understand how to do this consistently, those micro shifts can create macro gains. And that's something that is so essential. And your story creates impact incrementally. It doesn't always happen overnight. I just finished a book called Good to Great. I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably heard of that one. They talk about this flywheel that sometimes it takes a very long time for a business to churn and create that momentum. But once you create that momentum, it almost feels like an overnight success. So talk to us about what are some of the key things that you can do today that will have incremental benefit to make more impact on your audience?
Well, I think the first thing to do is understand what you're just talking about. Stories give context for us, right? So to help us not get lost in the day to day, even the stories we tell ourselves, right? So what is the story we're telling ourselves, and then the story we're telling to other people about us, and that's moving it forward. And I think it's important. One practical thing you can do, I think, let's borrow the very first question that I ask people when we're working on a book project. Let's use this as an example. We have 6 book starter questions that I share in the book, but the very first one is called the story focus question. And this is something really practical and powerful that if you do this, I literally believe it can alter the course of what you do in the day-to-day and why. The story focus question is simply this. If you put it in the form of a book, if someone were to read your book and they go through all the pages, they have a big smile on their face, they close the cover and they put it down on their bedside and they get up and walk away and forget 99% of everything they just read, which often happens, right? We don't hold on to that. If they forget all of that, what's the one thing that you would want them not to forget? If they forget everything but this, man, hold on to this. And you can ask this question also for a brand. If someone interacts with you or your brand or your business, and they forget all the other stuff you said, what's the one thing that you want them to remember? You want to stick with them. You want to do. And what I have found when we ask people that question, often immediately something percolates, something comes to the top as that's the thing. Like, oh, if nothing else matters but this is what really matters for me. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is the message I want to share. And in a book, when you get clear on that message, everything else in the book must flow to support that message. And if it doesn't, then it probably doesn't need to be in the book. It probably belongs somewhere else, if anywhere. In a business or a brand, again, we all like to talk about the details of what we do. And I could talk about for hours about how to create the stories and build the stories and the chapters and the publishing and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't help move the central message forward, then it may be good, but not great, to borrow Jim Collins' expression, right? So in order to get that flywheel turning faster, I think you've got to get clear on the focus, because otherwise your energy then gets scattered. You're trying to turn actually maybe multiple flywheels. You're trying to turn this flywheel and then that flywheel and that, and you don't get momentum on any of it because you're scattered. So that story focus question, I think, is a super practical way. What's the one thing that if everybody forgets everything else, what's the one thing that you want to stick with and that you really want to make sure that the world hears from you? I think that's a powerful place to move first.
Wonderful. One of the ways that I use that idea in my own coaching is I say, what's your one breath answer? What is the one breath? Like, you can't take a second breath. You have to get all of your idea, your concept out in one breath.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you have distilled the essence of the story. You've been able to find the true value, and you found the significance in it.
Right.
If you can't do it, if it takes 10 or 12 breaths, you didn't have enough time to write a short letter. You've probably heard that expression, guys.
Exactly.
If you had more time, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter.
Right.
A great, concise story often takes intentionality.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into this next section. I wanted to talk about the importance of not just impact, but influence. When you have real influence. This is something that a story can open doors for you if you have a lot of gatekeepers in whatever your industry is. A lot of times, a book or some type of PDF or some way that you create intellectual property can slip through the cracks that people can't. So, can you talk to us about how to create that in your own experience?
Sure.
And I would love to hear maybe a
Yeah.
personal story too that's not found in the book. How about that?
Yeah. 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 Well, I think when you talk about influence, influence is, I had a friend of mine, Hugh Hewitt, once gave this illustration to some students of mine when I was running a private school. He said, "Hey, I saw this particular movie and it wasn't that good." And he went on about it. I don't really think you should see it. It's not that great. He said, "But I saw this movie and man, it was amazing. It was this, and this." And he said, "Now, how many of you are more likely to see that second movie than the first?" And like every hand went up.
How about some
Right. And he said, "That's influence.
Mhm.
I just influenced you." Right. And people often think, oh, it's got to be something big and major, but it's often in the little things, in the subtle things that over time build an influence. And influence largely gets built by building your brand. People begin to know you and understand you, and they hear messages from you that are repeatedly the same thing. It's reinforced, it's reinforced, it's reinforced. They get to know you as that person that is a trusted voice in that space, whether it's an influencer as a thought leader, whether it's in a business and a brand, whatever that case might be. They hear that consistent story being told, and it builds influence over time. And I think very few things do that as well as a book. And here's when you talk about getting past influence to get past gatekeepers. Here's what I've learned about a book. A book can go places you will never go, and it can touch more people than you will ever know. That's the power of a book. It can get around the gatekeepers. It can end up in people's hands. I can't tell you how many times I have books that have changed my life that I still don't really understand how they came into my hands. and the authors, I've never heard of them before. I was at an event in Cancun this summer with I was speaking at an event with Mike Michalowicz, Profit First and so forth. And we had never met previously, but his book, Profit First, was super helpful to me back in the day. And it altered the course of our own business. Now, Mike didn't sit down and say, "I want to write a book that, man, I'm thinking of Bill right now. I think he's really going to need this book a few years from now," right? He had no idea who I was. It wasn't in his mind. But I met him and I told him, "Hey, your book altered the course of the way we do business." And he was like, "Oh, that's amazing. I love hearing that. That's awesome." And we connected around that. But up to that point, he had no idea the book had even come into my hands. It gets pushed out there, it gets shared, it gets talked about, and it can get around those people. And the other thing to think about too is if you're up against gatekeepers or you're up against people who are trying to screen and see who's who. I literally just had this happen this week twice, working with speakers who are trying to get on stages and so forth. And they both affirmed to me that, hey, if I know if I'm up against a speaker who doesn't have a book, I win. Like they just assume you're the author, you're the authority in this area. Of course we want you. You have a book. I mean, our audience is going to see you differently. They're going to expect different things from you because you are perceived as the expert in your industry because you literally wrote the book about the topic, right? So it opens those doors. And this is where, again, it gets into more income as well. Not only influence, but you're able to get on stages where to reach more people or in rooms that you otherwise couldn't have been. And it opens that doorway to drive that influence. But again, it comes back to story, how well you're telling your story and how intentionally.
This is something that pops into my head. Often I take my clients from getting their ideas from the page to the stage, because a lot of times people struggle with being able to articulate their value, and what that does for them
Yeah.
is makes it so that even though they have a lot of that intellectual property, they get stuck not being able to talk about it in a meaningful and valuable way. What are some of the ways you've been able to overcome that hurdle of,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
I'm just talking about everything rather than here's the objective, this is what the true value is and what I'm sharing?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, getting clear on your own meaningful message. That's step number one. But step number two, and this is critical, is understanding that your story is about you, but your story is not for you. That simple flip of things. Most people think, I have a message, I want to share it. It's about me. Hey, world, listen to me. instead of stopping to think, I have a message, I want to share it. What does the world need from me? What is the world looking for? What do they want to hear? Where are they coming from? Or my audience, right? And this is the whole brand story process, the whole storytelling structure that we use, the whole storytelling structure we use in all of our messaging. It begins by flipping it and beginning with, what does my audience want? What do they need? What are the challenges stopping them from getting what they want? And only then can I then begin to say, how do I establish myself as someone who can share something helpful to them? It's all about them. It's not about me. It's not about us. It's about, who am I serving? Who am I talking to? And once you put that lens in place, it begins like an editing process. You begin to run your story through that filter, and parts of it fall off, and parts of it become, well, that's obviously irrelevant to them, so I don't need to talk about that now, right? So it gets told through that filter of, who is this for? Who is this serving? And then you can begin to build out from there. But that's really where it begins, is flipping that script to understand that your story is about you, sure, but it's not for you.
Beautiful way. That was actually, of your entire book, that was the one quote that I dog-eared on your
That's awesome.
I love that. And I've said it in different words, but I loved how concise and simple it was. Your story is all about you, but it's actually for whoever it is that you're talking with.
Yeah, you have to think of yourself as a steward of your story. In many ways. You're a caretaker of what you have and what you've been given. And I believe that strongly. I believe, even from an eternal perspective, I believe our stories will outlive us, and the impact that we're going to have in that sense. And so I think it really becomes thinking that perspective, getting out of just day to day, and I just need to be busy, and I just need to throw facts against the wall, no, it's actually taking a step back, getting intentional about telling a cohesive story, a story ecosystem that people can connect with and resonate and build through in order to make a greater influence and impact.
I've talked about influence, impact. Now let's talk about the moolah, right? The actually getting to income, because this is where a lot of people want to get, but they start with the money. And there's a great story. I heard this first from my friend Jack Zufelt, where it actually might have been in your book too, but this idea that if you have someone that's focusing only on money, it's almost like putting on glasses and you have coins over your eyes. If that's all you can see is the money, then you don't actually have the ability to create value. And money is just an exchange of value, an exchange of energy. So let's talk about how you create intellectual property that actually pays you, rather than just courses that nobody ever watches or ever buys.
Sure. Well, and I think, in my book, I talk about how some people almost have an internal barrier to making money. On the one hand, some people are just chasing money. That's all they care about. And you're right, that they're blind to what people actually need. And therefore they're more running over people in an attempt to chase after. They're almost like Scrooge McDuck or something, right? It's just, that's all they care about. On the other hand, though, there are people who almost have a fear of money. And on this topic, I'm going to recommend a book that I wrote with Lewis Howes called Make Money Easy. Make Money Easy. It's a great book on healing your relationship with money. And a lot of us need to do that. We come in with preconceptions and fears about that. And I say that because there's almost an avoidance when it comes to, how do you monetize something? How do you make money on it? Some of us might feel like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. And I believe it is, because like you said, money is simply a placeholder for value. It's the world, the universe's way, how the world tells you that, hey, you gave value to me, and I want to give value to you. And rather than, it used to be that, hey, if you help me plow my field, I'll help you build your barn or something, right? But I don't have a field to plow and you don't have a barn to build. So let's just use money, and then you can go get whatever you want and I'll do whatever I want, right? But it really comes down to that. If you're adding value, then you're making more money. And in the book, I think it's chapter 6, I really lay out all the possibilities. It's never been easier to monetize your message. That's the key that people need to understand, is it's never been easier, provided you don't start there, right? And that's what many people do. They just start and throw something out in the world and, oh, I hope it sells. And it doesn't, because they haven't done the work of figuring out, what do they really need? What do they really want? Am I telling a cohesive story? Am I building that up to that point? Have I built my brand to the point where people can engage it and access it. It takes time. Dean Graziosi gives another example often. He talks about planting seeds, like apple seeds. You plant an apple seed, you don't go out there in 3 months and say, where's my apples? If you plant lettuce or something like that, yeah, you can go out and get lettuce, but it's only going to grow up and then it's gone and then it moves on. But an apple, you're really investing in something that can produce fruit for many years to come, right? But it takes time in order to do that. So I think going into thinking, how do I monetize my message? I think you got to be intentional about building your ecosystem. And not starting with monetizing, starting with getting clear on your brand story, then multiplying that, then focus on monetizing it when it gets a whole lot easier.
To piggyback off of Dean Graziosi's planting seeds,
sure,
there's an expression in Mandarin, ba miao zhu jiang, which means there was this farmer that planted all of these little, what was the type? It was just these little sprouts of things. And instead of letting them grow on their own and nurturing them and cultivating them, he looked at his neighbors and like, man, they're growing so fast. I'm just going to assist them a little bit. And he would pull up every single one just a little bit. And because he helped them grow, he ended up killing his entire paddy field.
Yeah.
We force growth.
Yeah.
That is something that will diminish it. It's almost like we're only focusing on the money, just getting those glasses of money.
Yeah.
But when we focus on how do I cultivate an ecosystem, how do I build a treasure trove and treasure up those experiences and then do something with them, it shifts exponentially what you can do. It reminds me of this idea of jewelry in comparison to bullion gold. If you look at extremely expensive jewelry, the component parts are the same as bullion gold. However, the craftsmanship is the difference.
Right.
When you look at how well someone is able to take and almost tell a story and create value and make it meaningful, that's where it is way more than the sum of its parts.
Yes. Yeah. And it's the same thing with story, right? And that maybe that's a good example. We all have that gold bullion within us, right? We have the raw gold in us, and we're talking about how do you craft that into something that is priceless jewelry that people really value, even above just the raw gold that's within us. Because I truly believe, Brigham, I believe, here's my meaningful message: every story matters. And I believe every person has this gold within them. Every person has this value within them. Every person innately has this story value within them. The question is, what are you doing with it, right? Are you building it? Are you crafting it? Are you perfecting it? Are you polishing it, preparing it to be of use to maximize your impact, your influence, and your income?
One of the things, if we can even go deeper with that jewelry analogy, sometimes we have rings that are not sized to fit a specific audience. They're for somebody else. But you have stories, and if you can tailor those messages so that you say, this is who I'm speaking with today, and this is how I can craft my story and simplify it so that they are in complete lockstep with me. They understand me. I've translated it in a way that it makes sense to them on an emotional side. Then you create universality in your story, and it makes it meaningful for everyone in the audience rather than just the one person that it's fitting for. So I know you've got 3 ways that you do this. Would you talk about that so that other people that haven't read your book yet, that you should definitely go check this out, Your Story Advantage, how you can say this is how it's tailored to fit this specific audience, but this idea can also help you here and then also help a larger audience.
Yeah, I call that, well, it really comes from the ideal audience question. Which is by the second question we ask in any book project. But understanding that is figuring out, you got to get crystal clear on your core audience, the one that the ring fits precisely, to use your analogy, right? That's what it was designed for. I once worked with a U.S. congressperson who had a book idea wanted to develop, and I asked him this question, who's your book for? And they said, well, it's for every American. Every American should read this. Everybody needs this. I thought, well, first of all, I have a congressman telling me that everybody needs this. Probably is not a healthy indicator, but I had to tell him, hey, no. Nobody's going to read it, because a book for everyone is a book for no one. Because no one thinks of themselves as I am everyone. No, we're all unique, and we are unique, and we think of ourselves as unique. So getting that ring to fit precisely. You got to get crystal clear on that. But then you do have a secondary audience. You have people who maybe they're not in my first ring, but they're kind of in the neighborhood, and they would appreciate this, and they would be helped by this, and they might be interested in it. And then beyond that, you have then comes your general audience. These are people who I might pick. Maybe that's the every American. That someone could pick that up. So let's say if you're writing a book for fathers, single dads is what you're talking about. Single dads raising kids or something like that. Your secondary audience might be any dad could probably benefit from the wisdom of this. They don't have to be a single dad. It could be any dad. And then a third ring might be, well, any parent really could apply this, but you don't start out with a book about, I'm going to write a book about every parent. If the audience you're trying to reach specifically are single dads, right? So maybe you're offering a coaching or service or something like that you're trying to reach that audience. You want to laser that in, get it focused, make sure that you're reaching those people. If you're not reaching anybody else, you're at least reaching those people, and everyone else is become secondary or general in that audience.
Beautiful. I think that's such a precise way to think about this, is when we are narrowing our focus as far as getting a niche, we can go extremely deep.
Yeah.
But if we go too wide, we cast that net really wide, we don't catch any fish.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I can give an example just from us at Storybuilders. When we go through this process, like the people we are really trying to serve are usually people like who are entrepreneurial, they're entrepreneurs, they're business leaders, they're thought leaders in some way who've had some success. They've had people resonate with their message. They've built a business, they've built a platform of speaking, whatever, but they feel like they're just hitting that ceiling because they can't reach more people, and they need help taking that story and multiplying their impact in that way. That's kind of our first one. But our secondary audience is people who are in the process of building that. They're aspiring to be that. They're putting that together. They're trying to get a book. They're get clear on their brand. That's where they're headed. And then the third audience would be people who are, this is a side hustle right now, and I'm thinking about someday maybe I want to develop this and put this together. And we can help those people also, right? So it begins with our central core, and then secondary, and building them out. And then that allows us to stay very focused. So we're not building anything that we do in our business. We're not trying to reach the people who have a side hustle. There are other people who that is their core audience. That's who they're trying to reach. But we know that's not us. So we approach it differently, and it changes the story that we tell.
Beautiful. I want to get your opinion on this, because I've developed this framework over the last 2 years, and this is the main way that I create value for people. And it's very similar to what you talk about. This is how simple my storytelling framework is. You focus on what is the most significant. You translate it so your audience absolutely with clarity understands the true message. You focus in your story so that there's one purpose to your communication. And then you use everything that you can as far as your performance abilities to make it so that everybody relives the experience. And then you end with like a clarion call of a yes. Yes, you collect a clear and concise call to action. Talk to me about your thoughts on this and how you may even be able to use it in the future.
Yeah. Run it by me again.
Yeah.
High level.
Significance.
Yeah.
So if you're at the bottom of the screen, you got significance. Yeah. This is making sure your message is focusing on what matters most.
Sure.
Then you've translated so your audience completely understands with clarity what it means for them. Got it. Your objective is very clear, because every story has a point and every point has a story. So you have a clear message. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And then you relive it. You don't just relate a story, because anybody can relate a story. You can use ChatGPT to relate a story. It'd be kind of boring. But to relive a story is to use performance skills, every element of who you are, what you do. And then your story needs to be wrapped up with a yes. To have it have any impact, influence, or create income, you have to have something happen because of the communication. Otherwise, communication didn't actually happen. So that's my storytelling framework.
Got it.
Love your insight.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to go backwards on this. The first thing that comes to mind, that yes concept really aligns with the last step in our storytelling structure, which is action, right? Of what are you going to do with this? And I think that's a lot of times people forget that, whether it's a leader sharing a message, a business sharing a message, a book, whatever. It's what do you want the audience to do with this? What do you want your customers to do this? What do you want your team to do with this? And so thinking about, I can't just do a mic drop and walk away.
Totally.
I have to give some guidance of that, because especially if you've done a good job of establishing yourself as an expert in whatever space, people will look to you and say, well, what do you suggest I do? Because I don't know what I don't know in this space, right? So I think that's certainly one place I would align with. And of course, the first one being, what's the significant? That really is about, my own words, we putting that your meaningful message. What is the one thing you want to get across, right? And then thinking, that translate feels like, how do I put that into terms they will understand? How do I make it connectable to them, right? Exactly. And then I also love the relive part. I'd love to hear you talk more about that. When you say relive, is that like give it a story context? Is that how do you people
when
relive?
you're talking about reliving, I discovered this principle by directing multiple theatrical productions, being an actor. My background is in performance skills.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at someone that's really boring as far as a presenter, they may have really great content. The concepts are brilliant. They're very competent, but they don't know how to make it sound entertaining. They don't know how to use vocal variety. They don't know how to make it mean something in a way that other people actually want to listen. The relive section is about taking your message and elevating it with your voice, with your body, and connecting all of the different emotional qualities and all of the different universal experiences. Say, this is all the different senses.
Yeah.
That's what reliving does.
Yeah. Yeah. I would actually take that in a little bit of a different direction as I'm thinking about it. Because a lot of your expertise is on the stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what we do often appears in the pages of a book. And they're different mediums. They're similar in many ways, but different mediums. And one of the things you got to think about is how do you get that effect in a book when you have what is literally one-way communication, right? Typically, when we communicate, as even on a stage, you're getting feedback from the audience. You get a sense of, hey, this is working, this isn't working. But in a book, when you were reading my book, I wasn't sitting there, watching you or listening in on your mental track.
Hope you weren't sitting there watching me.
We haven't advanced technology to that point yet. So
no, not quite yet.
But that really is the challenge of things like a book or things that you're putting out in the world via words, is how do you get that effect with using words? And that requires a lot of intentional thought, requires a lot of thinking about your audience, and putting the audience first and putting yourself in their shoes and what's going to resonate with them. And at some point, by the way, I've seen many authors really get into trouble because they get stuck in this spot wondering, is it really connecting? I think I can make it better. I think I can improve it. I think I can make another change. I can make another change. I can make another change. And they end up, I've literally seen books just sit in this cycle. I just talked to somebody yesterday. I worked with them, my goodness, 5, 6, 7 years ago to craft a book. And they got caught in this loop in their own team. And the book is now about to come out in March, like 5 years after we had a book together, because they just kept polishing and polishing and polishing. It's not quite right. It's not quite right. I'm reminded of a quotation that's attributed to Mark Twain. I don't think he actually said it, but it's attributed to him, that a book is never finished. It's just published. And so having that concept of your story is never finished, but it does need to go out to the world. And as you get it out there to the extent that you can, you get feedback, you refine it. Your story is living, right? It's a dynamic, and even when we talk about brand stories, it's a dynamic document that over the years is going to adjust and shift and sharpen as you move forward, as you discover more about your audience, more about you, and how you can tell your story better.
Beautiful. Well, if you wouldn't mind, since we've been able to talk over the last 38 minutes, what has been your experience on the Leveling Up podcast? Give some love, share why you think it was a meaningful episode, specifically for those that didn't get to watch the beginning of this. I'm going to cut this up and give them an opportunity to hear you share why this exact episode is so powerful.
Sure. Well, I think, when you talk about your story is where your breakthrough begins. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not clear on your story, you're always going to be bumping up against the ceiling and never really understanding why. And so understanding what is your story, what's the power of it, how you can tell it well and be intentional about it, and then understanding how those walls come down when you do that, how the friction disappears, how the trust builds, how you're able to then multiply that impact or influence and income, and really make the world a better place as a result of doing all those things at the same time. To me, that's the power of story. It's a game changer for your brand, for your business, for you personally. in terms of, following this path that every story matters. And I think that is the key, is that everybody has a story. They have this gold within them. It's a matter of pulling it out and turning it into this fine jewelry that can really sparkle and make the world a better place.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for, encouraging people to not just listen to this episode, but to drill down and find that gold that's inside of them and turn it into the jewelry that can make the world a better, more beautiful place. I think that's what your message has done for me. And I'm really appreciative of you spending the time, energy, and effort it takes to not only write a book, but to actually send me one. I thought it was really kind of you to send me that book. So thank you for
Sure.
that. And I do honor anyone that does that. So before we sign off, tell us where can people go and get to know you a little bit more? What's the easiest place to send them?
Well, the easiest place, first of all, to get the book is yourstoryadvantage.com, yourstoryadvantage.com. So you get a bunch of bonuses with that as well. Or you can get the book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy your books. That's fine too. But you'll get the bonuses at yourstoryadvantage.com. And then mystorybuilders.com is the best place to learn more about us and find social, follow us, all that kind of stuff. mystorybuilders.com. If you want to have a conversation with us about your story, we love doing that. There's no obligation. If we can help you, great. If not, we get out of your way. mystorybuilders.com/story. So mystorybuilders.com/story is the best place to just schedule a call and chat and see if we can be of help to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Bill. This has been a very wonderful conversation. We talked about that treasure trove, where your gold lies is in that story, and the true value of creating impact, influence, and income. I'm so grateful for you and your amazing work. Thank you for all that you do. Guys, go pick up his book. It was phenomenal. Highly recommend it. So looking forward to connecting with you more, and have a great rest of your day, guys. God bless.
Thanks, Brigham.